Okay, good afternoon. My name is Erik Mintz. I work for Mitsubishi Electric. I'm in charge of mobility infrastructure. This is kind of a fun presentation. It's easy to consume, kind of big pictures. I'm going to cover a little bit about the industry, talk to you about AnyMile. One of our customers is here, and I'm going to talk about another customer, Sustainable Skylines, and then just walk you through a couple upcoming proof of concepts. Also, by the way, I'm a local boy. I grew up in South Florida, so it's nice to be here. Some of you may be aware of Drone Industry Insights. It's a market research company, and this is what the ecosystem looked like in 2015. There's over 300 companies that year. This was not an exhaustive list, but pretty representative. Now I'm going to fast forward and show you what this looked like in 2022, and keep in mind that this is post-COVID. So almost 1,100 companies, okay? They're going to come out with their new list mid-year, and I would expect it's going to be bigger even with the downturn in venture capital. But I want you to notice how nicely structured this is in the hardware and software and services. And really the only industry to rival this in the last 50 years in terms of new product categories is the personal computer industry. This industry, the drone industry, really behaves like the personal computer industry, and it shouldn't be a big surprise because a drone is really a computer that flies. Now, in the context of today, you know, this is Captain Kirk with a flip phone. And when I started, you know, in 1990 at IBM, this was still science fiction. You know, it's hard to believe. And I show you this because I want to put this in context, right? This is coming, right? It's on its way. You know, a couple regulations and some infrastructure, but the technology is clearly way ahead of the regulations. And just some fun statistics about this. So that top number, that's almost 1.4 million deliveries a day. That bottom number is over 2 million air taxis a day, right? This is operating at a lot of scale, right? So this is on its way. But what I wanted to talk to you about really was about delivery, whether it be mail or packages or medical supplies or even food. The only thing that's really antiquated about this picture is the fact that there's going to be a pilot driving it. And the one thing I think we should all be aware of, and this is hard to be perceived because it's coming, is that there's going to be a real democratization of delivery, you know, meaning that we're going to have a lot more access to it. You know, a good example of that is kind of transportation with Uber. What's interesting about the Uber example is that it actually needed a little infrastructure. You know, if you go to the bigger hotels, convention centers, airports, they've repurposed some infrastructure to provide ride sharing. Right? So the market responded to make this more of a frictionless experience. Now this is a little harder in the drone industry because we're going to need a lot of assistance. So when you think about general aviation, there are a lot of subsidies, right? Air traffic control, radars are subsidized. In our world, someone has to pay for the UTM, someone has to pay for the radars and all the other types of surveillance. The other thing that most interests me about this use case is drones have to land somewhere, right? So we're going to have to repurpose a lot of infrastructure in this country. And what's interesting about that is the possibility of connecting all that up and the potential for the economic activity that could come from that. So delivery is really bifurcated in our industry. On one side, you know, over here, it's very focused on consumers. You've got companies like Amazon, Google Wing. And thank God that they're focusing on this use case, because do we really need a 3,000-pound car to deliver a hamburger? Where we focus is really on the B2B side. And I think we can agree that from a regulatory perspective, this is a much easier place to scale than in terms of the consumer. And if we think back historically, my first job out of school, by the way, was with IBM, and I was there sort of 4 years before the internet. And the industry was still evolving, but historically what kind of launched the PC was the hobbyists and the gamers. But where it really took on commercial viability was on this side of the house, right? Because there was so much utility to businesses. And then once the infrastructure came in, being the internet and connected everything up, right, all the economic development took off. So it's very likely that this is where the drone economy is really going to cross the chasm. So when we think about drones, oftentimes our mental model is of a small quadcopter, unless you come from the military and you may be thinking Reapers. But for B2B on this side, right, you really need these larger aircraft. These are the fixed wing guys. That bottom one is from Aerialoop, and Santiago is going to give you a very cool demo of Aerialoop. On the right side, that top one is a sophisticated quadcopter used by one of our customers called Sustainable Skylines, which is a business down here. I'm going to show you a really interesting video of that towards the end. So whether you're flying 1 mission a day or 1,000 missions a day, most, if not all of these things are involved in that mission. And there's a lot of sophisticated technologies associated with a lot of these point solutions. And the problem that you bump into as you start to scale up as a business is you realize how hard this is to coordinate all this stuff, right? So scaling for businesses is really the problem. You can think of a mission as like a symphony, and all of these elements here are musicians. And like any symphony, it requires a conductor to orchestrate the operations. So I give you AnyMile, which is an operational coordination platform. We're the connective tissue of this ecosystem. We're that orchestration layer. And really, the goal, the value that we're providing, and of course this is a very long, this is not a sprint, this is not a marathon, this is a cross-country run, is we're going to optimize the use of limited resources to streamline the efficiency of operations. We orchestrate the movement of goods and services and information to and from people and businesses and locations. And then we coordinate the interoperability of technologies, all these varying technologies under one platform, right, through integrations. And this is a big challenge because all these technologies really have to talk. So this is really the sort of the promise of AnyMile here. When we first started to evaluate the industry, these were the use cases that we really spent time on investigating, and where we landed were these areas. Obviously cargo delivery. There's a real strong delivery component to disaster management. Now at Mitsubishi Electric, they're very involved in power distribution in the power industry. And so there's some interesting opportunities that we're investigating to see if we're a good fit. We believe in it so much, we've built the application, we're just not clear yet. So it's going to take us some time. And then this last one, aerial advertising, this is really a great example in the drone industry of innovation. I'm going to show you that at the end. The true vision of AnyMile, the long-term vision, is that we're a marketplace for drone-related technologies and services, for delivery. And we built this really interesting demo to show that vision. It took a lot of technology to do this. We showcased this at CES this year, and it was a huge hit. So it was so popular that we decided to take this to exponential. We were just there 2 weeks ago, and this is a picture of our architect. And what he's going to show you, and this is a video, I'm running it at 1.5 speed just to save a little time, but what he's going to do is there's a permutation of missions that he's going to choose from, and he's going to choose where a hospital needs a very sophisticated piece of medical equipment, and then you're going to see a drone actually kind of fly the mission. Okay, so here we go.
Right. So we built this demo in order to give people a sense of the true scope of the drone economy and all the different use cases, and really get them excited about the possibilities, and show how AnyMile is really a connective tissue between all the parties that are helping all of these use cases possible. So we have a variety of different use cases we can explore: disaster management, inspection, for example, power lines, windmills, anything remote, hard to get to. We have, of course, remote delivery to offshore freighters and platforms, things like that. And then, of course, we've got
Yeah, a very cool demo. It took a lot of technology to pull that off. So really, AnyMile is an end-to-end SaaS software platform for managing delivery. And we believe that this is the best way to help companies scale their delivery operations for one really important reason. We are always integrating the current state-of-the-art into the platform, so we're creating this connected ecosystem of technologies. We are agnostic to the vehicles, the operators, the UTMs, all the surveillance technology, ground and air and ground infrastructure. Today, if you use the product right out of the box, it comes with a UTM from OneSky. We think it's a great UTM. If an operator that wants to use AnyMile and they have another UTM, we'll just integrate it into the platform there by extending this connected ecosystem of technologies. So this is the core set of applications. It's not the complete set, but it starts with shipment management. That's the customer-facing application. So this is where a customer enters their work orders for on-demand deliveries, and that spins up a mission inside a fleet. And this is where we start the optimization, right? Because the tool has to find and pair the right drone and pilot with the mission parameters. What's the package? What are the conditions? What's the route? What's the distance, right? So this is where we start the optimization. And then the service management, drones need a lot of maintenance and inspections and repairs. That happens inside of there. But also there's a lot of third-party services to manage the actual terminals. We just negotiated with an insurance company, so let's say a shipper wants to insure their package, that's going to be one of the third-party applications on the platform. And the way the OEMs, so the drone manufacturers, they've got to upload their performance and their capabilities into the application so we can do that kind of pairing. And then we give them this marketplace to push their aircraft out to, and they can put nice pictures and video. This is a free service that we offer to them that bring more eyeballs to what they're doing, but really it's also a service to the operators, because the operators can go to one place and just see kind of the current state of the art. So whether we're servicing a customer, or we're responding to an RFP, or we're applying for a grant, each of these use cases has a very specific consortium. This actually is a good example of a consortium of a proof of concept coming up, but you'll notice that top layer is the hardware, that middle layer is the software, and the bottom layer are the services, including the operator. This area right here, that area is really, you could think of that as kind of a bundle of situational awareness. That's kind of the most unique place in this consortium. Again, this use case is specific to this example for onshore, offshore delivery. So we're working with an oil and gas company to deliver stuff onshore to the offshore oil rigs. And that's the consortium that's going to be involved with this proof of concept. And so in this industry, the way they move stuff to their oil rigs is through a slow boat or a helicopter. And helicopters are just a very inefficient way to move particularly small packages. When a oil rig goes out of service in the evening, not only is it's literally 3 times the cost to fly that mission. And when you start talking to helicopter pilots, flying at night over the water is really kind of dangerous. It's easy to get disoriented. You've got bird strikes, you've got micro weather. So drones are really a good fit, for this kind of use case. We have another customer of ours, is another proof of concept, hospital networks. So these individual hospitals in all of these networks, they all have to carry all this excess inventory just in case something happens. One of these hospital networks pays almost $1 billion a year in excess inventory. You can imagine if you could go from just in case to just-in-time operations and be able to move some of those materials around, it could lead to a lot of cost savings. And so one of the things that, with these 2 examples, I have to believe if you have infrastructure for one and you have infrastructure for the other, we're going to find a way to connect these up and monetize this kind of network of things. This other use case, so wildfires. NASA is very involved. The project is called AERO, it's emergency response, and what they're doing is they're bringing to bear all the cutting edge technologies to really help fight these fires by, optimizing the operations to make this really efficient. I was just out there at the NASA Ames Research Center. There's a working group. We're one of those companies, and hopefully AnyMile is going to be one of these technologies to contribute to this use case. This last one is one of our customers called Sustainable Skylines. I met the CEO at the Drone Racing Leagues 2 years down here, and he decided to come up with the idea, instead of pulling an advertising banner with a plane, that you'd pull it with the drone. And there's significant benefits both in cost, safety, and environmental. And what I find so interesting about this is that last bullet, AI-enabled measurement technology. He's actually coming up with a new set of marketing metrics because the drone is so sophisticated. And it turns out what I learned is this is actually a dangerous activity. When you see a plane grab a banner, it's got to kind of do a nosedive, and there's a tail hook at the back of the plane, and it's got to kind of connect to the banner, and oftentimes they're using pilots that are accumulating hours, flight hours, and so that's one of the reasons that this can be a dangerous activity. But Miami Beach is going to be the first to see this. So they got their 44807 waiver from the FAA. They're flying a 4-mile stretch of beach from Indian Beach Park down to South Pier. So they're going to fly that stretch to and from. And now I want to show you this little video here. This is the aircraft that they're going to use from Valerian. In fact, the CEO right now is in Romania, and they're doing some testing. It turns out when you're pulling a banner, it's like pulling a sail, and it creates enormous vibrations. So a small plane, because it typically has enough mass to absorb the resonance, in this scenario, it just cracked the airframe. It literally shook the drone apart. Now, don't quote me on this, but I think they actually went to Ferrari because they have some of the best resonance people on the planet. That only got them 50% of the way. They had to do some redesign. They had to reorient some of the guts of it. And eventually, they got to 100%. And now, this aircraft is really a very sturdy aircraft. So again, you're going to see this. They're starting to test in mid-May, and you should see this on Miami Beach, and then they're going to go up the coastline in Florida. Okay, so that's it for me, and now Santiago is going to give you a demo of Aerialoop.
All right, I'm gonna grab one. Hello. Hey, how's everybody doing? All right, so I'm going to do a couple of things. I'm going to play a video in the back of a live demonstration that we did with Mitsubishi a couple of weeks ago or a month ago for Kaiser Permanente. So it's not live. It might look like it's live, but what do I do? All right. And then while the presentation is on, I will just talk. And I will talk about the topic of this presentation, about potential profit revenue verticals. All right, let's see if this works. Oh, can we mute it? All right. So first, I want to start with a question. Who knows if there is a commercial airline out there operating drone delivery in urban environments, like cities? City of over 3 million people, you know? Wing, okay, yeah, perfect. So and do you know any other companies? Maybe not in the US. Zipline, okay. Mana, perfect. Well, there's another one that I represent, which is Aerialoop. It's this one. So we've been certified for 2 years. Our largest operation is over the city of Quito. So, and I'm going to tell you about, because the focus of this conversation is about revenue, so I'm going to tell you the story of how Aerialoop came to be and what potential revenue streams we have realized that exist. Okay? So I'm going to start with, well, you guys that are in the drone industry, I always start paraphrasing John F. Kennedy, saying we decide to be in the drone industry because, not because it is easy, but because it is hard. You know, I remember when we started 3 years ago and we were like, oh my God, this is gonna be easy. We're gonna go to Latin America, we're gonna get permits, we're gonna start operating. In 3 years, we're gonna be worth billions of dollars. But 3 years passed and we're still struggling. But I'm gonna tell you about the 3 stages. Okay, so first stage is we decided to develop our hardware, our software, and get the first permit. Let's start operating. Let's start understanding what that is. That happened the first year. How do we do it? We got this permit in Quito in the outside of the city. We were flying from the outskirts of the city to a neighboring town, and we started dropping things and sending things. Stage 2, well, you're going to see that's all our systems in a live demonstration, how we do our pre-flight checklist, how we do all our operations. So stage 2 was, now let's go to the FAA of Ecuador, which is called the DGAC, and tell them we want to create a network in the city of Quito. This is a city of 3 million people, and we say, okay, we're going to put 5 airports. Imagine a metro system in the sky. We're going to choose 5 areas that are highly dense, like 90% of the population are within 2 miles of these points. And we're going to ask for permits from A to B, A to C, A to D, all the combinations, 15 possible combinations between those 5 airports. That happened 2 years ago. We got approval. So we are officially a commercial airline. We are the airline with the most flights in Ecuador today. There was a newspaper came out last year and said, oh, amazing, the commercial airline with the most flights is a drone delivery airline. And we started flying. And you can see there's one of our planes flying. Our longest route is 28 kilometers. I think it's 20 miles, more or less, give or take. My conversion is not too good. But that was stage 2. So stage 2 is, let's define a network, let's fly BVLOS, let's fly over people, let's start understanding the technology. Today we're flying between 30 to 50 flights a day in the city of Quito. But now we're getting ready, and this is where AnyMile came into play. We are getting ready for stage 3. What's stage 3? This stage 2 was low volume network operations. Now we want to go to high volume. Now, how do we get to high volume? Now we're talking about what happens, or what do we need if we're doing 1,000 flights a day over a city of 3 million people. I know that's a big number, but that's how we engineers we always have these factors of safety. So that's where AnyMile came into play, and many other players. So this is where the first opportunities for revenue is, like, by tackling this process step by step, we're identifying key players that need to come in and co-develop with us the tools that we need in order to continue to grow. So we partner with AnyMile. They're giving us a perfect platform for our customers. Who are our customers today? We tried all of them. If you want to understand a little bit more about X, Y, Z, vertical, come talk to me after the meeting. I can tell you what works and what doesn't. So we started with food, the worst, or the hardest. I'm not going to say the worst, because it all makes sense at the right volume. So with food, you need high volume to compete with the motorcyclist, especially a motorcyclist in Latin America that gets paid $300 a month, and works 48 hours a week. Well, there is my co-founder and CTO, Andreas Antener, talking a little bit about our safety management system and how we control our fleet and everything else. So food, interesting, but at the right volume. We still deliver today things for Rappi, which is like a Uber Eats for Latin America. It's a big unicorn, LATAM. Then we went into parcel delivery. So we're working with a company called Servientrega, which in most of the major countries in Latin America, it's one of the biggest players. So we started a project. Now we are delivering with them an average of 300 packages per day. The thing is, they're giving us a lot of envelopes. And we have a pad. I can tell you about that one. It's also competitive. It also makes sense at the high volume. Then we went into laboratories. Laboratories, perfect. Because laboratories, we found that there was a specific savings when we were more efficient at bringing samples. We also, dark warehouses. We have a very interesting project where a company that was going to create dark stores across the city, we told them right at the right time, said, you don't have to build them. We have airports already around the city. Keep all your stuff in one central warehouse. Then you're reducing inventory. You're also reducing the need for infrastructure in those places, and then it makes sense at a lower volume. We've also worked with hospitals. Actually, I don't know if you got to that view already, but there's an area in the video where, when the drone lands, the drone that took off in the video, it's going to land at our central airport in the city of Quito, and it's actually in the backyard of the largest hospital. And it's in the middle of the city. Like, you see the highways, like cars going by, and the airplane landing there. So there's a lot of profit when it comes to different verticals. There's many that we're starting to that we have tackled and that we know are going to grow within the right timing. And there's also there's infrastructure, there's inspection. There's always we had these customers from other countries that understood what our operations look like and said, wait, can I transfer that and inspect 20,000 kilometers of oil pipeline daily? And I want the same capability. I want a drone that can fly from A to B and then take off from B to C and then from C to D, which is our drone can do, and that had limitless communication to send video signals. So that's another vertical that came out. But the other interesting profitable markets is all the complementary technology. So AnyMile is one. Erik spoke about UTM. We've also partnered with a couple companies because now the government of Ecuador is telling us, wait, you're now flying almost 100 flights a day. We're opening operations in Guayaquil. Wait, I might need your way of communicating with the local firefighters and police and helicopter users, I think worked until now. Now we need something else. So I think I'm running out of time. So I'm going to cut it right there. But yeah, any questions? Yes.
Are you a Part 108 operator or Part 135?
No, we have not certified. So governments in Latin America has not asked us to become that. We have looked at that potentially for coming into the U.S., but we have not seen. Even though I've spent half of my life in the U.S. And I dealing with the FAA for a long time. I previously worked at Piper as a manager certification and worked at Virgin Galactic for a few years. I still have it's difficult. You know, yeah, it's hard. Yeah.
How much would let's assume that there is a new network that can be built that's dedicated to these autonomous vehicles. How important do you think that would be to make it more?
Oh, I think extremely important. When I talk to government officials, especially like mayors one of the biggest issues is always infrastructure. They spend a lot of money reducing traffic, improving commerce, doing all this stuff. And I'm a true believer that the drones of all sizes are going to be a key intrinsic part of this very complex model. So the quicker we do it, actually Quito is now seeing benefits in reduction. So we've shown that we reduced 0.5% the use of motorcycles for delivery so far. And I know it's a micro test, but that's us flying 30, 40 flights a day. Once we go to 1,000 and other numbers, it's interesting. And cities, governments in Latin America spend an average, I think it's an average of $1 billion to reduce 1% traffic. So that's another area that we, and now we did the same thing with Colombia. So we brought all the DGAC or FAA of Colombia, mayors of a couple of cities, and we brought them to Quito and we showed them and say, look, you're afraid. They're looking and figuring out how to rule, how to manage these type of things because they're all new. And when they saw the operation, they were like, okay, well, maybe I can start like you guys did. Maybe I can take first steps. And okay, I think we're all set.
Thank you so much, Santiago. We're going to be starting the startup pitches pretty soon. If you can just leave the front row free for experts, that'd be great. And yeah, we'll be seeing some great startup pitches very soon. Thank you.
Yes. Can you hear me? Is it on? Great. Welcome everyone to the 2024 M2 Innovators Challenge presentations session 1. We'll be starting with 3 wonderful companies, Mythos AI, Oonee, and Aerolane. Our judging panel is Jennifer Jacobs-Dungs from EIT Innovation Energy, Gabriel Scheer, who's the Senior Director of Innovation from Elemental Accelerator, Nicholas DeAndre, last year's winner, the CEO and co-founder of Grid Matrix, Jonathan Kilman, founder and chairman of Converge Public Strategies, and Pedro A. Santos, Executive Director, Emerging Technologies from Miami-Dade College. We're super excited to have everybody here. Thank you to our judges for joining. And without further ado, Geoff from Mythos AI.
Thank you.
And you can just press okay.
Thank you guys. It's great to be here. I don't have much time, so I'm going to rail through this. I'm Geoff. I'm CEO, co-founder of Mythos AI. We set out to solve some of the largest inefficiencies in global shipping, specifically associated with the fact that we don't know how deep the water is at ports all around the globe. Sounds surprising, but we can't update the charts as quickly as the depths change, and the global economy loses hundreds of billions of dollars each year because of this. And this is especially true here in Florida. Each year, hurricanes come to our coasts, the ports are shut down, and they can't be reopened until they've been surveyed to make sure that there's no hazards to navigation. There's no containers that have fallen in the waterway. It's still safe to move the ships. So what we have created to solve this problem is something you could consider a Roomba for the ports. We have vertically integrated autonomy, mapping the seabed, and we can now turn around high-fidelity charting information in near real time for the ports. This is a big deal. When ports are closed down, they lose tens of millions of dollars a day, and GDP loses hundreds of millions of dollars a day, and sometimes ports are closed for days or even weeks at a time. So what you're seeing here is the technology put to use. Ports can now box an area, the vessel will go fill it with data, we spit out very intuitive visualization tools so you can physically see, is it safe to navigate here or is it not? We've taken it a step further, and we've actually made a web interface so that we can process the data in real time, get it to the stakeholders that need it. This would be the county. This would be the ports that need to know if it's safe to navigate ships here, the Coast Guard to open the ports up, the Army Corps who needs to dredge the waterway, and the shipping companies who want to know, can I actually get my ships in and out of the ports? This is a digital twin tool for securing the economic security of the ports and states that use our technology. This is about building resilient waterways. So this is our entry to market that we're launching here at Mythos AI, and it is all enabled by self-driving vessel technology and marine autonomy. As we're mapping these ports, we're actually training self-driving, and we're going to use that self-driving and start pivoting it into other verticals and other industries. And this, what you're seeing right here, is that whole logic put to work. This is a recording of one of our vessels navigating at 30 miles an hour down a very narrow channel in Florida. It is avoiding other vessels. It is avoiding channel markers. It is obeying the rules of the road. This is the most advanced self-driving vessel technology that I'm aware of exists right now. And what we're doing with it is turning it into the future of multiple verticals. One is mobility. Think future autonomous ferries, people movers, cargo movers in urban areas and in suburban areas on the water. This is also the future of recreation. Boating is super hard. If you make it easy, more people will do it. And if it's guided by autonomy, we can assure that the more people that get on the water, that they're interacting with the environment in a more sustainable manner. And also, finally, this is the future of shipping. People don't realize that shipping has a massive workforce shortage. Hundreds of thousands of seafarers and mariners are not in the market. It's preventing shipping companies from scaling, and it's actually one of the largest detriments to our ability to actually scale the economy. We can't move more ships, we can't move more stuff. And so shipping companies are actively seeking autonomy as a solution for how they can grow their businesses. And we're fundraising right now, so one reason I'm here is because we're fundraising, and we're fundraising to turn this exact capability into products for these verticals that we're talking about here. We want to start connecting with the shipping companies. We're beginning to roll this out with Fortune 100 OEMs in terms of scaling autonomy
for the markets. The other reason I'm here is because we want to connect with Miami. We're a South Florida company. We've been working with universities here, and we want to start rolling out our technology here in South Florida. The digital twin tools will help them secure their economic security in the face of climate change and more frequent storms and hurricane events. And also, when you're talking about autonomy and mobility, you need to train it. You need to partner with the municipalities where you want it to be operated, just like the self-driving car companies do. We need to do that too. So that's what the story behind Mythos AI. Now I'll stop and take some questions from y'all. Please.
So as it looks like right now, you are building a vessel, you're developing ADAS software,
Yes.
you're doing sensor technology for depth, and you're doing sophisticated data processing. Like fast forward to kind of your ideal scenario, what part is going to be your core business and what part will you kind of contract manufacture or outsource?
Correct. So the core of Mythos is we're a software company. The team is software driven. We don't develop sensors. We don't develop hardware. The logic is that autonomy is not the cheapest endeavor to develop. So we are generating revenue by collecting data for ports to fund the development of autonomy. And that's exactly what we've done. That last video wouldn't exist if we hadn't gotten revenue from ports over the past year to fund the development of our technology. The end game for Mythos is autonomy. Autonomous vessels is a multi-$100 billion TAM that changes the way humans fundamentally interact with the waterway. It is literally future mobility, future shipping. If I could sum it up, we want to turn the global supply chain into something that looks more like a conveyor belt of goods moving around the globe than what it is today, which is a complete traffic jam. And it's very inefficient, won't be able to decarbonize, and so we're laying out the products in a way that we can tackle all of that. Long answer.
Similar question, but focused on your commercial targets. You mentioned a few different potential markets for where you might deploy. You talked about recreational, you talked about shipping, you talked about a bunch of things that way. What's your plan that way? What's your strategy for go-to-market and growth?
Well, what's great is that our stack is very transferable across all of those things. So at the core, what we're doing in that video is we have creating a model of how to navigate autonomously in these waterways. Initially, there's 3 segments of it. One's perception, just what's happening. What is that thing? Well, that's already a product on its own for situational awareness for all of these vessel types, whether you do something with it or not. Next is planning, which that is also doing. We're saying, hey, now that we know what that thing is, it's a sailboat, it's a channel marker, we're making a plan. That's what that white line was. I think you should go here. That's also a product for each of these markets, right? It gets sticky at the last part where you have to start tying it into the motion and the robotics that control the vessel. So that is strategic partnerships over time with OEM boat builders and shipping companies, where in time we start rolling in and taking control and command of the vessels and turning it into autonomy. So we can scale all of them kind of in parallel.
So a couple of questions. I see you're mapping for depth.
Yes.
What kind of technology are you using to do that?
So it's a multi-beam sonar is what the technology is called. It's kind of standard off-the-shelf equipment that's used in the industry today to do the same type of mapping.
Okay. And I see you're also using, looks like computer vision technology to map against, you see vehicles, other vessels on the water. What about infrastructure?
Infrastructure.
Like bridges?
Yes, could this be used to identify bridges or map them?
Map them.
Yes, absolutely. So what's unique about what we created, we've actually been commissioned by FIU last week to map a huge part of Biscayne Bay and the Hillsborough Bridge, because the same technology is used to create 3D point cloud data of anything that's underwater, right? And so what we did on our entry to market is we made that process as more efficient than any current technology allows it to be. And so this same technology is used for habitat mapping, it's used for infrastructure inspection, it's used for channel dredging and maintenance projects. You just can't get it all out in one 5-minute presentation, unfortunately.
So you stated a very large TAM, which is great, but who is the customer, or who are the customers? I know you touched upon some that may be the customer, and also do you see government as a potential customer?
Yeah, so the first customer is government, because today the federal government is the main buyer of hydrographic data. So what we're doing is so new, we're kind of skipping above the industry and going straight to the end customer, which is the ports and the states. So we've done pilot projects in Michigan, in Louisiana, and in Texas, actually, and the states have been the sponsors, because the states are like, we are the ones losing all of the money. But what's happening is our website's actually a portal, and who's using it are the oil and gas majors that own terminals at the berths. And they're going, we need this to know we can get our ships in here with more stuff. It's also the Army Corps of Engineers who's like, yeah, we'll take that data because we want to be able to understand when and where we need to dredge. No one's been able to collect the data efficiently enough to start to be able to model how the waterways actually change in time. And we've made this product and this database on the website so now you can have historical data and we can actually start to understand how the waterways change. And so basically, at the end of the day, the customers we're targeting are everybody involved in the marine ecosystem. These are the shipping companies, these are the agents, these are the pilots.
So, great presentation. I have a question. I realize you're doing pilots, so it might not be consistent yet, but how are you charging? Like, what does this cost? And when you think about your pricing model, how much are you being paid for the data? Right now you're selling data, right?
Yeah.
And
right.
I'm assuming the data you're selling is the depth data, right?
I didn't hear the last
The
bit.
depth data.
Yes, we're selling the depth
So right
data.
now you're selling depth data. Like, how do you charge for depth data?
So we charge kind of by day right now is the
By what?
by day of
By day.
surveys.
By day
Yeah.
of service.
So
Okay.
because right now that's how the industry understands it. So typically people charge up to $20,000 a day for 1 day's worth of hydrographic survey data.
Okay.
But that data ends up locked up. So like the port will have it and no one else will have it. So what's unique about our business model is we can start charging significantly less because we're making all that data available to more people. So right now, the ports are paying day rates for it, but we're going to be charging the pilots additional rates. We want to get people on retainers. So that part of our business model is kind of unfolding, in all honesty. The initial customers are the ports. They're going after grants, they're acquiring their own vessels, and then services from Mythos to operate those vessels and manage the data back end for them.
Got it. So, and I don't want to take up too much time so everyone else can, but one other question I had then, if you're using, it sounded like earlier off-the-shelf sonar, and then it sounds like, you know, you just said the port can typically pay someone else a different amount to do it. It seems to suggest there are other providers for this technology. What, you know, is your differentiator? Like, why are they going to come to you, and why is that something that's going to be a scalable proposition?
Yeah, so the real issue here is that hydrographic survey is an incredibly antiquated industry.
Okay.
If you were to collect this data today, it could take as many as 8 different software packages. You have to be a master's level individual to do it.
Okay.
It can take, if we gave NOAA a brand new data set today, it would take them 90 days to turn a chart around. 90 days. The bottom changes in the Mississippi River 10 feet in 10 hours. So it's not adequate for what industry is actually seeing. What we've created isn't the first ever automated data pipeline where we are turning the data around into a usable form factor in 12 to 24 hours after getting the data. So that's what's unique about what we've done. We've basically automated the processing and the acquisition. So if we have standardized robotic vessels, we can trust the data. We know what the data is. Then if we can trust the data coming in, we can automate the processing and spit it out in a high fidelity form. And we're the first company to be doing that. That's the differentiator.
So but you don't have the robotic vessels yet, so it's like you have the same sensors as everyone else, the same boats, the same pilots, but different software that allows you to charge less and deliver a better product.
Correct, and it's tied into the autonomy. So like driving these charts is a serious, driving the surveys to get this data is a serious skill set. You need specific overlap, specific data density requirements to meet the requirements of the Army Corps of Engineers or the ports. Doing it manually is extremely burdensome, and very often surveys are done over and over again because they don't get it right the first time. Autonomy takes over, and we're driving the boat based on the specifications of the job. You must have 200% overlap. Okay, the boat's making its next line, making sure it has at least 200% overlap. All of these things make us able to spit out an end product much faster at a higher fidelity rate, and that's what's revolutionary. The other thing is really the back-end website. So typically a port will pay for a survey, it goes to an engineering company, and they just have it. It comes out in like PDF form. What do I do with this? But the shipping companies don't get it. The Army Corps doesn't get it. So then the Army Corps has to do their own surveys. Shipping companies just don't get the data. Our web backend allows it so that anybody with the URL gets the exact same data at the exact same time. And that's all done without a human in the loop at all. So that's the other big part about it. Everybody needs this data to move ships around efficiently, and they just can't get it. So if we put it in one place for everybody at the same time,
Now we can start making much more logical decisions about how we're moving freight around. And that's the real goal behind it.
Got it. Thank you.
That's it. Thank you guys. Great questions.
Interesting stuff. After Mythos, we have Oonee with Shabazz Stuart. Welcome.
Okay, I'm going to start with a little risk-taking. How many people in the room ride bikes in cities? Okay. Now, how many people in the room have had a bike stolen? So, that's about half. My journey with Oonee, I'm Shabazz Stuart, started when I had my third bike stolen in a period of 5 years. And I decided to use my know-how, my expertise. I used to work at a business improvement district to think holistically about how do we solve this problem from a policy standpoint, and how do we do it in a manner that's efficacious. Now, for those of you who don't know, your experience is not atypical. About half of all riders in cities across the country experience bike theft. 1 out of every 4 people in my hometown, 1 out of every 4 households has lost at least 1 bike to bike theft. Last year, we had 22 people who died in lithium-ion fires. We had over 700 fires across New York City. This is a massive infrastructure deficit. It's an adoption barrier, and it is the greatest, most ignored problem in transportation today. So, how do we solve this? We solve it with one comprehensive system in communities large and small across the country. Secure bike parking, charging, well-designed, beautiful, smart, modular, and a mobile ecosystem that allows riders to get the resources they need with ease, so you're not on your own. And we have to do it with broad intersectionality with placemaking, logistics. We have to understand that our cities have streets that are underutilized. This is a broader problem. We're not just looking at secure bike parking not being available. We're looking at limited ROI from our streetscape. We need to make smarter, better, more optimized streets for the 21st century mobility. So here's a rendering, for example, of a parklet combined with secure bike parking that can be sold directly to communities across the country. Our formula was born out of a recognition that communities and cities, large and small, businesses, they actually want this, but the process, implementation work is so cumbersome, so complicated that people say, you know what, no. I'd just rather lock my bike up to a pole. I'll let my customers figure it out. I'll let my stakeholders worry about that. We streamline completely horizontally in a turnkey fashion the project management here, and we build it to scale. So we work with cities to handle every step of the process: design, customization, financing, operation, management, installation, deployment. There are 2 ways that we scale. We go city by city, county by county. We work with public agencies, business to government, but we also sell directly to the private sector, B2B. We are building an AI-powered software tool that allows businesses, real estate developers, property owners across the country to build, design, customize, iterate, install, and manage this critical hardware with minimal overhead from us. Now, I want to talk about traction. This is a lot of big ideas. Since we launched in 2019, we've built 17 stations, including 2 pilots, across the New York and New Jersey metropolitan area. We have contracts with the Port Authority of New York and New Jersey, with New Jersey Transit. We've worked with the MTA. We have a contract with the city of Minneapolis for the nation's first outside of New York, New Jersey, secure bike parking and charging system. We've worked with the city of Jersey City to build the nation's first secure bike parking and charging system at the municipal level. And we are just scratching the surface. We have a small, gritty Brooklyn team of about 4 people. And we do this because there is broad and deep needs from communities for this kind of infrastructure. Communities desperately want this. We're not pitching a new product. We're pitching a way to get something that communities desperately want. I want to touch briefly on monetization. We deploy a value capture strategy. So We make money in advertising. That's how we monetize right now in the most prevalent way. Hardware as a service, charging customers, B2B, a fee, leasing the infrastructure, bundled up, one convenient subscription fee a year, and eventually targeted upsells on an e-commerce marketplace. This is a strategy that's based around not charging users, not deriving revenue from users, not powering the business from community members, but creating an innovative financial model that will allow us to build a juggernaut and really impact communities in a way that is aligned with the priorities of individuals. I want to talk briefly about a case study before I close. The city of Jersey City released the nation's first secure bike parking and charging RFP. 30 stations, a 5-year contract. We work with them in every step of the process. We met with the community. We incorporated local artists, local voices. We did all the site planning. We did the implementation work. And we advised the city not just on how to build this program, but how to expand the program, how to scale the program, and eventually how to leverage community feedback to make the program something that everyone embraced. When we cut the ribbon, we didn't only see advocates and folks who ride bicycles show up. We saw folks who were not previously engaged with this kind of infrastructure say, look, you have included our voice in this process, and we want to be here because we feel a sense of ownership over this infrastructure, and we support not just what you're doing at Oonee, but what the city is doing for our community. We are in a Series A, and so I will say that if you are looking to back a company that has an ability to solve a problem, a challenge that we've been talking about for year after year after year after year, and to help us make the most of our streets, come talk to me. If you are a representative from a DOT or from a county or from a municipal government or a property owner, and you're looking for a way not only to bring value and better experience to your stakeholders, but also to help unlock the power of micromobility, come talk to me. I look forward to your questions, and thank you for your time.
So thank you. Yep. Great presentation. Quick question. So based on your presentation, your customers, the first customers are cities. Who do you think would be the next step? So do you think that would be property owners, would be condos?
Yeah.
What do you see your company moving forward?
So point of clarification, I think we actually have customers that are in the private property owners right now, and we have customers that are municipal, state, and frankly all of the above. I think just taking a step back, we have to realize that communities are not just city, public, private, et cetera. There's a broad overlap. So for example, in our New York City network, we actually have a station that's on private property. The developer came to us and said, I want this. It represents our property well. They're in front of the Barclays Center. Can we work together? And it functions as part of our New York City network. That being said, we view about 80% of the business as being a business-to-business value proposition, where we've only raised about $3 million in capital since 2019. And that has made it very difficult to focus on smaller customers because the overhead required to adjudicate that relationship, it's just really difficult for 4 people to spend 10 hours on the phone to start with a small property in Des Moines, Iowa. What we're hoping to do with our Series A financing is to build that software platform that I mentioned that will allow customers, not just all over the United States, but all over the globe, to customize, design, iterate, finance, install, deploy, and manage that infrastructure at a very low cost in terms of overhead. And that's where we see the real juggernaut potential here.
Thank you.
Yeah, one question I have is, how do you see this, scaling outside of New York City? It doesn't have to be with property developers, but at a certain point, you need enough people who ride bikes in an area to put that many bikes in one place.
I'm glad that you asked that question. Okay. So I want to highlight actually something really important. We just were duly awarded a license to operate in Minneapolis. We're building a citywide secure bike parking and charging system in the Twin Cities. And so this is not just a New York City opportunity. This is an opportunity that has global resonance. And I want to talk about Minneapolis for a second. Now, we are signing the license, this week. Russ is actually in the back of the room, so I'm not going to say anything that, I'm going to be careful of my words. Here's what I would like to do in Minneapolis. I would like to deploy an advertising-based system of 20 to 25 stations, but I would like to couple that with a placemaking and micromobility infrastructure that is sold directly to community-based organizations, to restaurants, to block associations, to private businesses. And we view the potential there as perhaps an initial network of phase 1 of up to 100. That's something that we think is quite realistic, not just based on our experience in New York City, but based on the fact that there are about 400 people all over the country, 400 organizations have emailed us and said, hey, we want to bring this to our community. I think that when you realize that micromobility is not a silo, we don't say, okay, we are walking down the street, there's a bike, there's a bus shelter, there's a newsstand. These are all elements of a complete street. And when we think about how we can combine them in a multi-purpose format, how can we build turnkey infrastructure that allows communities to mix and match the elements that they need and to build an experience that speaks to the neighborhoods that they're in. That's a global proposition. Every community in the world wants a complete street. Not every community wants the same complete street, but every community in the world wants a complete street, and every community in the world has to get around, has to socialize, and has to provide their children, their seniors, their community members with a safe place to live, work, and eat, and play. And that's what we're really in the business of doing.
So who's making these? Where are they being manufactured?
So we have a global supply chain. The pods that you saw in the in the photos were built in Canada, in Quebec City, with a company that unfortunately went bankrupt called Poitras. The parklets that you saw in the rendering are being built with a company called Cycle Hoop. They actually manufacture something called the bike hanger, which if you've been to London, there are about 3,000 of them deployed across the city. They've got relationships with shops in North America and in Europe. We have a manufacturing apparatus that is also quite prevalent in New York City, upstate, in the Midwest, in Mexico, and in Guatemala. And so we have the ability, depending on what the needs are, to mix and match where we build. Now, where we want to ultimately get to is not building a piece of infrastructure wholesale in one shop. We want to build the components individually and then assemble them locally where they need to actually be deployed. And so in the intermediate time period, what that will look like is perhaps building components perhaps in Mexico and China and Canada, and having an assembly shop perhaps in Tulsa, Oklahoma, Minneapolis, upstate New York, Detroit, where those components will be shipped and they'll be assembled and then finally shipped to their final destination. So there's no one answer there, but the supply chain is global.
And how replicable is this? I mean, are you building, how custom is this versus are you building here are 50 different components we have and you mix and match those standardized components? Or are you truly custom building for each market?
Every component we build, every design in our portfolio is modular. There's not a one-size-fits-all solution for any streetscape. And so in order for this to work, we have to make this as easy to assemble as IKEA furniture. And that's part of our scale proposition. So the challenge here is not the idea, right? The challenge is not convincing people that they want it. We're a small team. We have no PR, no GR. We don't even have a team member in business development. All of our growth has been organic. What will determine our success is how readily can we modulate the infrastructure so that it is easy to ship, it's cost effective, and it can be assembled by someone with minimal expertise. A global supply chain of talent, it gets shipped to Des Moines, Iowa. We have a local partner there, an operations partner, that doesn't need a PhD to build one of these, right? That's the only way that we'll be able to offer this to communities at an affordable price, right? And so it's actually critical. There's quite some criticality to our business model that we have not only a broad manufacturing base, but we also have a modular framework that allows for a fair amount of flexibility. Thank you so much, everybody.
Thank you. Active mobility is near and dear to my heart. Last but not least, we have Todd Graetz from Aerolane, who has some interesting things to say about new forms of aerial shipping. Enjoy.
Thank you. Okay, all. I'm going to go through this pretty quickly like the previous speakers. I'll be around for questions after this. So in short, before I show you any slides, we're going to double the capacity of most every aircraft flying today. We're going to do so by, and also reduce their fuel consumption by 65%. We're going to reduce their use of pilots. We're going to give the United States military and allies additional capacity they do not have. And we're going to take roughly 60 million tons of emissions out of the atmosphere by 2040. How are we going to do it? How would you do that? We're going to go to the Miami airport. We're going to look at all those beautiful big cargo planes. We're going to walk up to the operators and say, I'm going to double the capacity of that thing. How are we going to do it? Any guesses? Well, before we get to that, let me tell you the problems we're fixing in detail, right? Cost expansion for foreign freight and domestic freight continues to speed up. And demand continues to increase, especially in areas that do not have daily or regular heavy cargo capacity aircraft. Fuel costs keep going up, emission mandates there, traffic congestion on the surface and the airspace. These are all problems we had to solve. Now, some of the language is already giving away what we're doing, but these are the problems we're solving today. To get inspiration, when we started the company over 2.5 years ago, we studied our heritage in rail and in trucking. Any guesses how we're going to double that capacity just yet? We're going to tow that capacity. We're making towed cargo gliders. We're starting with existing aircraft that fly today. In fact, just north of here, we got a 400 square mile test range just north of Orlando up to the Florida Panhandle and out to the Gulf. Version 1 and version 2 have been flying for nearly a year and a half, moving large capacity, doubling the capacity of existing aircraft in service today. Now we're moving on to our clean sheet design. This is using a wide range of patented technology that borrows on the widely established principles of towing gliders, which happens every day worldwide, and the principles of aircraft operating today, along with all the other functions we had to put in that prove that you can automate this action in scale. This is flying today. Here's a closer look at, we call it version 3 or AC1. This is designed to work with a wide range of regional and extended range cargo aircraft in service. Think a lot of Cessna products, a lot of Beechcraft products that are in use by hundreds and hundreds of air cargo aircraft. This is what we're going to start building with the proceeds of A-Round. But we're not stopping there. However, a key to highlight is this is a single pilot operation. This does not change modify the processes on the ground or in the air in a significant way. And if you have questions or are active, I can explain that later. We already have some customer segments identified. As I said, the regional cargo carriers plus the national cargo airlines, 2 of which have already sent us some of their most proprietary information, and we're in the process of showing how their fleets can be modified and their operations can be changed for the use of the technology. Obviously, there's a military use case. Again, both of those groups have either submitted binding letters of support for federal funding or are in the process of looking at their networks together. Now, what you see in the right, by the way, that's the latest iteration. That's version 3. We have a 700-mile range basically between El Paso, Texas and Fort Worth, Texas, where this is operating in demonstration today, moving real-time freight. Stepping back to military, a lot of capability here. If you're thinking contested logistics, if you're thinking areas where massive amount of disaster recovery needs to occur, that's what that use is for. We have 3 variants. The one on the left, the 1T, that's what's flying today. There are thousands upon the current configuration standards for that aircraft, and they could have their cargo capacity doubled in size. Just think what that would do for air service around the world. The 3T I've talked about, let's talk about the 10T. That tends to get people a little excited. So every major Airbus and Boeing product in service today moving global air cargo, we can double their capacity. You can all figure out what that means. But most of the time when I talk about a cargo glider going 550 miles an hour at 40,000 feet, people don't believe me. But I can tell you, you've all been in a glider. If you took an airline here and it was a major airline, you were in a glider. I promise you're in a glider, because if both of those engines quit, you don't want to drop like a stone. That thing will glide. Similar principles. But a massive amount of capacity expansion. As I said, by 2043, with 20,000 in service, we take a significant amount of emissions out of the way. We have 3 different types of operation. The normalized, primary, widest used, think SkyTrain, always in tow. Taxi, takeoff, cruise, landing, always in tow. Could put multiples in there, or for certain military or humanitarian cases, we can do automated glide and land. A lot of progress, raised a pretty strong seed round. We built the automation system. We've already got the initial FAA approvals. We have a very clear, defined regulatory pathway. The FAA does not have to do any rulemaking. There's no miracles required out of them. I've had to do that before. I don't want to do it again. A very simple pathway to get into the regulatory process, and as I said, they've already started granting us approvals. A couple other things we prove, again, using our data and other active carrier data, we've proven that we can cut their costs by 65%. Been covered a lot in industry press. We have more coming out here in a few weeks, including the announcements of some new technology that makes this possible. Got a strong team, a lot of former FA, a lot of former rail, UPS, air ground, you name it, a strong group of venture and institutional investors, a lot of traction, and now we're going to start our expansion and entry into commercial service. That's it. I'm here for questions.
Just one first quick question. You mentioned patented technology. Who owns the patents?
We do.
All of them?
Yep.
How many?
Every
patents
one
do
of
you
them.
have?
We have 6 plus 4 in provisional status. Yep. The 6 most important. Yep. No one's wanted to do cargo gliders in scale, so we had to develop a lot of supporting technology so it can work with pilots, without pilots, and with a wide range of aircraft. So that's the core of the IP.
Can you talk a little bit about the fuel and emissions related sort of outcomes of a successful 10T or even 3T?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, all versions, whether it's conversion or 10T, it's the same principle. And I hate to make it so basic, but this is the only way I think. The first level of savings is if you send 1 aircraft to do 2 aircraft worth of work, you've already cut your equipment use, you've cut your fuel expenditure, you've cut your pilot costs. Then the other thing is the other fuel costs come in. If you're going to take that plane off, I don't know if anyone knows this, but sometimes up to 50% of the fuel applied to today's engines is wasted in many cases through movement of machinery, noise, and other inefficiencies, all right? Well, if you're going to use that fuel anyway, if you're going to use the engines to get yourself into air anyway, why not take double or whatever the payload you desire, or at least add capacity to those longer global flights? So when you add all that up, that's how you use less fuel, right? So, and again, from the simple 1-to-1 all the way to moving double, and obviously double is half the fuel expenditure for same packages.
Quick follow-on. So you're saying that essentially you use the exact same amount of fuel to fly the 2 as you would fly in the 1, meaning the takeoff has no added drag and...
Very minor, and you make it up in cruise. You make it up in cruise. Good catch. But you do. You use less fuel.
At the end of the day, are you doing the operations of these aircrafts?
Excellent question.
Or are you selling them?
Selling them initially. Now, we have one airline where we may participate on a monthly recurring revenue and participate in the expanded freight, and we get a percentage of that expanded freight volume, which is quite lucrative. But of course, a couple others that we've talked to, and military especially, this will be a capital sale with obviously a monthly recurring service and support charge.
And do you already have an idea today with the off-takers of what the complexity costs are for those companies to then manage the logistics of, the whole operations, what you need on the ground, the extra room, on and on?
Yeah, actually, great question. More than we can get into now. If you're happy diving into that, I'll tell you in short, using their own ground and air operational data, it is as simple, or if not more simple, than their current operations, especially in the rural markets and some of the underserved areas because they don't require as much ground support. But excellent question.
Who else is using this technology today or something similar to it? Are there competitors?
No, nobody yet. And again, they'd have to get around some pretty strong IP. However, gliders are in service every day all over the world. People tow banners all over the world every day, right? We saw some examples of that earlier. And of course, this was heavily used in World War II for the massive movement of air cargo across the English Channel. The amount of payload that was moved would be a challenge for even today's aircraft.
I actually think you answered both my questions. Someone asked about the amount of extra fuel that's burned during takeoff when you're adding this payload.
Yep.
And then the next question I had was, why hasn't this been done? Like, it seems like it would have been done before.
Yeah.
It's not like you're just kind of hooking up a trailer the same way you would for.
That's basically what you're doing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it seems like at some point someone would have thought of this in the history of aviation.
We haven't found a good reason why. We think sometimes the most simple, most elegant things are the most complex for people to understand. There's a lot of people focused on a wide range of innovations. By the way, we want them all to work. We don't care how you power your aircraft. We don't care if it's running on cold fusion and what kind of wings it has. We want to be behind it. So, I think a lot of people are focused on the tractor and focused on all the supporting systems. I don't think people have realized that this has been proven time and time again in history. I also think at the time this was done, when you get out of World War II, the reason this ceased, fuel was cheap. There was no concern about emissions or the environment. Pilots were plenty. Equipment was easy to get a hold of. There wasn't the congestion, right? There weren't all these external factors, so it was easy to set them aside. But we think it's time to use all of today's modernized carbon fiber systems, autopilot technology, and related supporting systems to bring this very proven idea forward. One last thing, NASA tried to get the industry to look at this about 15 years ago. We found all their data, and for whatever reason, they just didn't take it. And again, in our conversations with some of the largest airlines, we've withstood a lot of scrutiny, and they're obviously coming around now.
Interesting. Thank you.
Yeah. All right, thanks all.
A lot of interesting presentations. These are the first 3 of a 6-part series. So we have session 2 tomorrow, mid-morning, if you want to come back, and then this is a competition, and so we have our judging panel who will be judging, and then we will see a winner by the end of tomorrow. We have 2 more panels for today that I just wanted to make everybody aware of. Getting creative, innovation comes in many forms. That's on the leadership stage, and then also charging ahead, keynote conversation with the U.S. DOT Deputy Secretary Mayor Trottenberg and Joint Office Executive Gabe Klein. So please join us for those, and see you tomorrow for the rest of the presentations.